She didn't even text me. Not a single balloon emoji. Not a half-hearted happy B-day at 11:59 p.m. Not even a missed call that I could pretend was intentional. For the third year in a row, my mother forgot my birthday. And for the third year in a row, I told myself I didn't care. But then, 2 days later, I posted a photo on Instagram. Just one photo. Me standing next to a sleek graphite grey Audi. The caption short and sharp. Finally did it. Year of me. By the time I got home that night, the picture had been viewed more times than anything I had ever posted. Mom's name sat right at the top of the viewer list, as if she had replayed it like a reel she couldn't stop. That's when the call started. First my brother, then my aunt, and finally Mum herself, sending a text at 8:07 a.m. Family meeting tonight, 7 p.m., don't be late. Suddenly my existence was urgent enough to schedule around. Suddenly, the woman who couldn't remember the date I was born remembered how to herd us all into the same room. I knew what this was about. It wasn't about my birthday. It wasn't about me. It was about the fact that I had something shiny, something expensive, something that wasn't borrowed, handed down, or negotiated. For the first time in 30 years, I had chosen something for myself, signed the papers, and driven it off the lot without needing anyone's help. And for them, that was the crime. The message sat in my inbox all day like a summons. Family, meeting tonight. My brother Luke had even liked it in the group chat with a thumbs up emoji, which was funny because he never responded to anything, unless there was food involved. I stared at the text through most of my lunch break, wondering if I should even show up. The last time we'd all sat around Mom's dining table was Easter, and half the conversation was about how much better Luke's life would be once his business took off. Mom passed him potatoes like they were medals. Aunt Mel asked him about expansion plans, as if she were an investor. And when I quietly mentioned I'd gotten promoted, someone knocked over a glass and drowned out my words. That's what family meant in my house. Luke's dreams were a Broadway production. My reality was background noise. And now, 2 days after forgetting my birthday, they were demanding my presence. I knew exactly what was waiting for me. The fake smiles, the lemon-scented cleaner that made my eyes water, the bowl of stale pretzels in the middle of the table, and beneath it all, the real agenda, the car, my $55,000 Audi, the one I paid for, in full view of the dealership cameras, the one with paperwork that had only my name on it, the one that proved I was no longer the reliable one they could lean on and ignore at the same time. I could already hear the script. Family shares. Family helps. Family doesn't flaunt. And I could already picture the moment I'd finally do what I'd been preparing for since I printed those receipts last night, spread the papers across the table like evidence in a trial, and watch them realize I'd been keeping track all along. This wasn't just a meeting. It was going to be my cross-examination of the life they built on taking from me and pretending it was love. At exactly 6:58, I parked on the street outside Mom's beige colonial, the same house that never changed, the same shutters she refused to repaint, the same porch light that flickered every time the wind hit it just right. I didn't pull into the driveway because I knew how that would go. Luke would come out, puffed up like a landlord, and say, "Move your car, I might need to back out later." It was always about some invented rule designed to put me in my place before I even crossed the threshold. So I left the Audi gleaming under the streetlight, locked it with a soft chirp, and grabbed my tote bag from the passenger seat. From the outside it looked ordinary. Blue canvas, faint coffee stain near the strap. But inside it was loaded. Bank statements, Venmo receipts, typed timelines with dates in bold. Even a manila envelope with July 12th, 2023. $2,400, written in Sharpie. The rent money Luke had begged for and never mentioned again. And tucked in the side pocket, a small black recorder I'd clicked on the second my shoes hit the walkway. Legal in our state, one-party consent. If this turned into what I suspected it would, I wanted proof. Mom opened the door at 7:03, like a hostess timing her entrance. Her eyes did a slow sweep from my shoes up to my hair, then slid over my shoulder toward the curb, hunting for the car. She smiled, tight and practiced, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "You look good," which in our language meant, "I'm calculating what you spent on your haircut." Inside, the table was already staged like a courtroom. Mom at the head, Aunt Mel perched beside her like a loyal juror. Luke sprawled at the far end like he owned the oak itself. The chair waiting for me wobbled. Of course it did. Nobody fixed it for 3 years. And a bowl of pretzels sat in the middle, as if that was hospitality. I sat down, the recorder humming silently in my bag, my heart oddly steady. "So," Mom began, hands folded, wedding ring catching the light. "This is about priorities." Aunt Mel nodded on cue. Luke tapped his phone face down, sighed like he was already bored. "We're a family," Mom said, tilting her head with that saccharine tone she uses when she's about to demand something. "And families share, wins and burdens." She paused. "Your Instagram." It sent a message. Luke barked a laugh, no humor in it. "A bad one. It's not a good look, posting luxury right now." I raised an eyebrow. "Right now." "A time when Mom's roof is old," he ticked off on his fingers. "When Aunt Mel's furnace is out. When my business is scaling." He always said scaling when he meant failing. "And Kylie's little girl needs braces." I didn't even know Kylie had a daughter, but apparently her teeth were now my financial obligation. Mom leaned forward, eyes bright. "So, here's what we propose. We're creating a family fund, a simple account we all pay into. You're doing well now, honey. You could seed it. Nothing crazy. Just say $10,000 to start. You'd be helping the family." She said it like I was being invited to an honor society. Luke chimed in, smug. "And about the car, it might make sense to title it under Mum for insurance purposes. Or under the fund, fiduciary common sense." Aunt Mel bobbed her head so hard her earrings clicked like wind chimes. I let the silence stretch until it was thick. Then I reached into my tote, pulled out a sheet, and slid it across the table. Group chat screenshot. Timestamps. 2 days ago. No happy birthday. No calls. No texts. Just silence. Then another sheet. Venmo requests. Highlighted in yellow. February 14th, 2023. Can you spot me $180? July 12th, 2023. Short on rent just this once. 2004. $100. November 2nd, 2024. Mom's tires, emergency $640. March 6th, 2025. Inventory delay, need bridge $1,200. Total, $8,920 out. Total, back, 0. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The numbers screamed. "Why are you keeping track like that?" Aunt Mel finally sputtered, scandalized not by the taking, but by the accounting. "Because I was told to be responsible," I said evenly. "And responsible people keep records." Luke gave a scoffing laugh. "You know I'm good for it." I met his eyes, calm, like you were good for my 17th birthday. His smile twitched, just for a second. I leaned back, folded my hands, and waited for someone else to try and tell me. Family meant me writing blank checks in exchange for crumbs of affection. This time, I wasn't swallowing it. This time, I brought the receipts. Luke's laugh faded faster than he wanted it to, and I could see the irritation flicker across his face when I didn't flinch. Mom cleared her throat like she could reset the mood. But the air in that room had shifted the second I put evidence on the table. I reached into my tote again and laid down another sheet. This one, the purchase agreement for the Audi. My name on every line, my signature at the bottom. The financing details clear as daylight. "Second," I said, my voice steady, "I didn't ask anyone to contribute to my car. Here are the papers. Payments are mine. Insurance is mine. Nobody is on anything but me." Mom skimmed the page, lips pressed so tight they whitened. "Well, we're not saying you did anything wrong. she said finally, which is her favorite way of insisting I did. We're saying this is a chance to show your values. Family values. I agree, I said. That startled them. For the first time all evening, they leaned forward, waiting for me to surrender. Instead, I reached for 2 envelopes I had labeled in black marker the night before. I held up the first. Proposal A. I seed your family fund with $10,000. Today, in return, you all sign a written agreement. No one asks me for money for the next 12 months. No loans, no spotting, no emergencies that sound like business plans. If there's a fire, hospitalization, eviction notice, fine. Otherwise, nothing. And disbursements only happen when a neutral third party reviews the need. Not Mom, Luke's. Head snapped up. That's insulting, he said. We don't need some referee. Great, I said, and tapped the second envelope. Proposal B. We each pay into a family fund based on percentage of income, verified by recent tax returns. Not feelings, not stories, real numbers. And we agree no one titles property under anyone else. We agree that birthdays matter enough to be acknowledged. We agree that if you borrow, you sign a repayment schedule, and I don't have to chase you down. Mom let out a laugh that was pure dismissal. You want us to show you our taxes. You wanted me to show you my title, I said quietly. Luke pushed his chair back just slightly, jaw tightening. You posted a $55,000 car, he snapped. You made us look bad. And there it was. Not about emergencies, not about community, about optics, about image, about the same God they'd worshipped my whole life. How we looked to everyone else. I leaned in, my tone lower, firmer. 2 days ago was my birthday. Did anyone call? Did anyone send a message? Did anyone even remember? I looked at Luke. He stared at the table. Mom smoothed the napkin in front of her. Aunt Mel grabbed a pretzel like it was a lifeline. But the car, I said. The car got a meeting. The silence that followed was sharper than any scream. For the first time, they didn't have a script. I did. I slid one last sheet from the tote. An invoice I had made on my laptop. At 1:13 in the morning, when I couldn't sleep. The header clean. The lines sharp. Every loan and request I had ever covered, written out in black and white with totals at the bottom. Itemized, I said, tapping the page. $8,920 in the last 2 years. Terms, forgiven in full, effective immediately. Luke blinked like he misheard. Forgiven? Yes, I said. I am not your bank. I am not your safety net. I am not the reliable one you forget until you need optics. The debt is gone. So am I. For a beat they just stared, like I had spoken another language. Then Mom tried to soften her voice, the way she does when she thinks she can pull me back. Don't be dramatic. Sit down. We're family. We're talking. We're not doing this, I said, my tone flat, and I stood. Luke shoved his chair back, the legs scraping the hardwood like a warning. You can't just walk out. You owe. I don't owe you my boundaries. I cut in. My keys were already in my hand, the new fob heavy against my palm. I'm changing my phone. Plan tonight. New number. If there's a fire, call the fire department. If there's a hospital, call an ambulance. Don't call me for tires. Don't call me for business plans. Don't call me for appearances. Mom's face fell into that collapsing look she wore whenever the script failed. If you walk out that door, she said, low and sharp, don't walk back in when you need us. I looked around the room one more time, at the polished table, the pretzels no one had touched, the chair that still wobbled after 3 years. You already made sure I didn't need you, I said. You've been practicing that for decades. I walked toward the door, heart steady, the recorder in my bag still capturing every word. And I knew as soon as the knob turned that this time the leaving was final. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. Every photo on the wall staring at me as I passed. Luke in his graduation cap. Mom holding a birthday cake for him with sparklers. Aunt Mel hugging him in front of a Christmas tree. Not one picture of me after the age of 12. My hand tightened on the knob, but before I could twist it, Luke's voice shot across the room like a dart. "We talked to Dad," he said, his tone smug and calculated. "About the house." I stopped, back to them, pulse quick but steady. "What about it?" I asked without turning. Luke leaned into the silence, like he was savoring it. "There's going to be a transfer," he said. "Title strategy, tax planning. He thinks it should go to the person who understands family obligations. Someone who won't sell." The grin in his voice was unmistakable. I stood there a moment, my keys pressed into my palm. And for the first time all evening, I let myself picture that house, the narrow hallway upstairs, the floorboard that creaked third from the top, the sun warming the front steps at 4 o'clock in September. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And now Luke was dangling it like bait. Slowly I turned, met his grin head on, and slid a final paper from my tote. One I hadn't planned on using tonight, but had brought just in case. A printed email, time-stamped September 1st, 2025, at 9:42 in the evening. Subject line: Update re-property, need to talk alone. 4 sentences from Dad. Unmistakable. Mom reached for it like touching the paper could change the words, but I pulled it back. "Interesting," I said softly. "Because Dad already told me he wants to talk. Alone." Luke's smirk faltered. Mom's face tightened. Aunt Mel sat frozen, with her hand still half inside the pretzel bowl. "We're done for tonight," I said. "This is me saying no. This is me being seen." And with that, I opened the door, stepped out into the cool air, and let the porch light flicker across my shoulders. Like a signal that the meeting was officially over, the night air wrapped around me like a release, a cool and sharp, after the lemon-scented suffocation inside. And for the first time in years, I felt taller as I walked down the steps. The Audi chirped when I pressed the fob, headlights flashing once, sleek and steady, like it had been waiting just for me. I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and the silence was instant, thick, a kind of silence I hadn't known inside that house since childhood. My hands rested on the wheel for a moment, as if I had to memorize the feeling of being in control. Then my phone buzzed. A new message, unsaved number, Dad. 4 words. "Call me tomorrow at 10. I stared at it, the glow of the screen painting my face, and I couldn't help the smile that rose slow and sure. Tomorrow would not be another ambush around Mom's table, or Luke's invented rules. Tomorrow would be my meeting, my terms, my voice heard without being talked over. I put the car in gear, pulled away from the curb, and watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror. The flickering porch light still twitching like a nervous tick, the silhouettes inside pressed to the window, already rehearsing their next lines. But I was done being their stage. The road ahead stretched open and dark, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't driving home from them. I was driving toward myself. The road unspooled beneath me, long and black and empty. The kind of road that used to make me feel small when I was younger, coming back from late-night shifts at the diner or long drives from college, when I was too broke to stop for gas until the last possible second. Tonight, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like freedom, humming through the engine, every turn of the wheels, a reminder that this car was mine, this choice was mine, this life was finally mine. The houses blurred past, porch lights glowing in rows, families gathered around tables I used to envy, laughter spilling out of windows I could never hear in my own house. For so long, I had convinced myself that if I just worked harder, gave more, stayed quieter, maybe one day I would earn a seat at that kind of table. But the truth was clearer now than the yellow lines flashing beneath my tires. No amount of sacrifice was going to turn people who forgot my birthday into people who remembered who I was. I thought about every loan I had forgiven, every ride I had given, every time I had rearranged my own plans because Mom called me at the last minute to pick something up, or Luke needed me to spot him until his business caught up. I thought about the holidays where I cooked, cleaned, wrapped, gifts, and then sat there invisible while they toasted his successes. I thought about the birthdays, not just the ones she forgot, but the ones where she remembered only enough to buy a cake, with his name already printed on it, telling me not to be petty when I asked why mine wasn't there. It was all part of the same pattern. I was useful until I wasn't, invisible until I had something they wanted, forgotten until I made myself unforgettable. And now, with a car they couldn't claim, a purchase they couldn't rewrite, suddenly I was the center of attention, not because they cared, because they couldn't stand the proof that I had built something outside their control. The phone buzzed again in the passenger seat, but I didn't look this time. I already knew it wasn't an apology, wasn't a birthday wish, wasn't the kind of message I had once begged for silently. It would be Mom trying to smooth it over with guilt, Luke demanding I explain myself, Aunt Mel telling me I had gone too far, and for the first time, I didn't care. They could talk themselves hoarse in that house, rewrite the story however they wanted. My story was different now. My story was me behind this wheel, driving through the night, my own name on the title, my own voice in the silence, my own power in the act of leaving and not looking back. The engine purred steady, the road stretched endless, and somewhere beyond the turnpike, beyond the weight of their demands, tomorrow waited. 10 o'clock. Dad's call. A conversation. That might finally be mine alone. For the first time, I wasn't scared of what came next. For the first time, the future felt like a road I wanted to take. The lines of the highway blurred into a rhythm that matched my breathing, steady and unbroken, and the glow of the dashboard felt almost like a pulse guiding me forward. A reminder that I wasn't trapped in their script anymore, that I wasn't the forgotten child clutching at scraps of acknowledgement, but someone who had drawn a line they couldn't erase. I replayed the scene in my head, Mom's tight smile faltering when I laid the receipts down, Luke's smirk cracking when I pulled out Dad's email, Aunt Mel frozen, with her hand halfway to the pretzel bowl. All of them caught off guard by the fact that I had learned their game and written my own rules. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became that the car wasn't just metal and leather and monthly payments. It was proof that I had finally stepped out of their orbit, that their gravity no longer owned me. I drove past neighborhoods lit with porch lamps, past gas stations where teenagers huddled with sodas and laughter, past restaurants where couples lingered at windows, and with every mile, I could feel the years of obligation peeling off like old wallpaper. Every memory of being told I was selfish when I asked for something, every birthday that passed like it was nothing, every holiday where I cooked and cleaned while they celebrated him, all of it falling away behind me on the road. The phone buzzed again and again, but I didn't reach for it because there was nothing they could say now that would pull me back. No apology that would erase the silence of 2 days ago. No lecture that would make me forget the sound of Mom asking for $10,000 while never once saying happy birthday. And as the Audi carried me farther, I realized this was the moment I had been chasing my whole life without knowing it. Not the money, not the car, but the power to say no and keep driving. Ahead of me, the night stretched wide and endless. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of the distance. I was hungry for it because tomorrow wasn't theirs anymore. Tomorrow was mine. The city lights began to fade in the rearview mirror until there was only darkness ahead of me. The kind of quiet highway that used to make me nervous when I was younger. But now, every mile felt like permission, like freedom unfolding in real time. And the hum of the Audi beneath me was steady, certain, like it knew I was finally where I was supposed to be. I thought about how many years I had swallowed the guilt they fed me. How many times I had been told I was cold when I asked for repayment, ungrateful when I wanted recognition, selfish when I dared to say no, and how every one of those words was just a way to keep me in the role they had written for me, the dependable one who never needed celebrating, the convenient background to Luke's endless spotlight. But tonight, I had broken the script. Tonight, I had shown them the records they wanted to pretend didn't exist. Tonight, I had said the words they could never unhear. I am not your bank. I am not your safety net. I am not the one you forget until you need optics. I knew the calls would keep coming. The messages would pile up. The stories would spread through the family like wildfire. She's changed. She thinks she's better. She abandoned us. But none of it mattered anymore because the truth was, sitting right here with me, leather seat under my hands, open road in front of me, my own name on every document, every receipt, every title. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to validate me. I wasn't waiting for someone else to remember my birthday. I wasn't waiting for approval. I was living proof that I could step away, close the door, and keep driving without asking for permission. And as the night stretched on, I realized that leaving wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning, the hum of the tires against. The asphalt became a kind of soundtrack, steady and low, almost meditative. And with every passing mile, I felt the tension that had been my inheritance begin to dissolve. For so long, I had carried it in my shoulders, in my stomach, in the way I always sat at the edge of chairs, waiting for approval that never came. And now here I was, gripping a steering wheel that belonged to me alone, not borrowed, not signed, under someone else's name, not something Luke could wave around as if it had been gifted by his generosity. The truth that stung the most was that my family never wanted me to succeed independently, because my independence meant their control was over, and that frightened them more than any overdue bill, more than any failing business. When Mom asked me to seed their so-called family fund, she wasn't asking for stability. She was asking me to tether myself back to them, to prove that no matter how far I went, I would always be their reliable shadow. But shadows vanish under light, and for the first time in my life, I had lit my own. I thought back to being 9 years old and standing in front of that cake that said, "Happy birthday, Luke and friends." My name missing, my mum telling me not to be petty when I asked why. I thought about being 17, watching them unload a trunk full of dorm supplies for him, while my birthday went unnoticed until a midnight text that felt like an afterthought. I thought about every whispered conversation where I was the diary, every chore where I was the worker, every holiday where I was the background, and it all collided with the memory of Mom's face tonight when I laid those receipts on the table. How quickly her expression cracked, how desperately she tried to recover, and for once I didn't back down. That moment wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming decades of erasure. The night pressed close around me, stars sharp against the black, and I let the wind through the half-open window wash across my face. Cool and biting, the phone lit up again, buzzing against the seat, and I didn't touch it. I knew exactly what was waiting there. Apologies coded in guilt, accusations dressed as concern, maybe even Dad trying to mediate before the storm got worse. But I wasn't going to answer. I wasn't going to let them twist my no into a maybe, my boundary into a compromise. They had taken my silence for compliance too many times, and tonight I had finally made it clear that silence was over. The car ate up the miles, and I kept driving with no destination set, only a direction, away from the house that smelled like lemon cleaner and fried onions, away from the pretzel bowl that symbolized their brand of shallow hospitality, away from a family that only remembered me when I had something they wanted. Ahead of me was uncertainty, yes, but it was mine. An uncertainty of my own making was better than the false stability they dangled like a leash. The email from Dad burned in my mind. 4 lines that hinted at a future I might still have to fight for. A property transfer that could expose where his loyalties truly were. But even that no longer terrified me, because I wasn't 9. I wasn't 17. I wasn't the daughter they could guilt into compliance with the word family. I was 30. I was independent, and I had proof, on paper, on title, on every receipt, that I didn't need their permission to own my life. The road stretched wide and endless, and instead of fear, I felt something I hadn't in years. Relief. Relief that I had finally said no. Relief that I had finally walked out. Relief that the sound of the door closing behind me wasn't a loss, but a victory. And as the horizon opened in front of me, the only thing I knew for sure was that I was Never going back. Not as their scapegoat. Not as their safety net. Not as their silence. The next chapter was waiting. And for the first time, it would be written entirely by me. The night stretched on. The hum of the road constant. And with every mile, I felt like I was putting years between myself and that dining room. Even though only an hour had passed. Years of being the one who remembered birthdays. No one returned. Years of carrying the weight of other people's emergencies, while mine went unnoticed. Years of learning to smile through the sting of being invisible. The Audi wasn't just a car anymore. It was a declaration. Every mile a signature. Under the words I had finally spoken. I am not your bank. I am not your safety net. I am not the person you forget until you need me. And as the miles blurred past, I let myself imagine a different kind of future. One where I didn't have to measure my worth by what I gave away. One where I could celebrate my own milestones without apology. One where my birthday meant something, even if I was the only one who remembered it. The phone lit up again, another vibration against the seat, and I ignored it because I knew it wasn't going to be the words I had wanted for 30 years. It wouldn't be Mum saying she was sorry for forgetting. It wouldn't be Luke admitting he had drained me dry. It wouldn't be Aunt Mel acknowledging that I was more than the background character at every family gathering. It would be another demand wrapped in guilt, another order disguised as concern, another manipulation disguised as love. I had finally learned that love without recognition, love without respect, isn't love, it's control. And control was the only thing they had ever offered me. The wind rushed in through the half-open window, cool against my skin. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was running toward a life where I chose who had access to me, toward a circle that wasn't defined by blood, but by respect, toward a version of myself that had been buried under their needs, but had finally clawed her way to the surface. I thought about tomorrow, about Dad's email, about 10 o'clock, and what that conversation might mean. And I realized that no matter what he said, no matter what decisions he had made about the house, I wasn't afraid anymore. Because even if I lost the property, even if Luke somehow maneuvered his way into it, I still had something they couldn't take back. Proof that I could walk away. Proof that I could live without them. Proof that my life didn't end at their table. The city lights had long since disappeared, and the road ahead was nothing but blacktop and stars. But I wasn't lost. For the first time, I knew exactly where I was going. Not a place, but a state of being. A life on my terms. A life where my birthday wasn't an afterthought. A life where my voice wasn't drowned out by someone else's ambition. A life where my worth wasn't measured by how much I gave up. And as the car carried me deeper into the night, steady and certain, I knew I would never be the same girl who walked into that meeting. That girl had been erased for decades. Tonight, I had written her back into existence. The miles stretched behind me, like discarded pages of a book I no longer wanted to read, and with every minute that passed, I felt the distance between who I had been and who I was becoming grow wider, impossible to cross back over even if I wanted to. For so long I had believed their story about me, that I was selfish when I said no, ungrateful when I wanted more, invisible unless I was useful. But tonight I had watched their faces when I laid the truth bare in black and white, and I knew they had seen it too, the undeniable record that I had been the one holding the family together while they pretended I was the problem. That moment was mine. A reclamation that no amount of gaslighting could erase. And the silence that followed me out of that house was louder than any apology they could ever manufacture. The car moved steady beneath me, leather cool against my skin, the road unbroken in the darkness, and I let my thoughts drift forward instead of back. Tomorrow 10 o'clock, Dad's call. For years I had wanted his attention, his recognition, his validation, and maybe part of me still did. But I realize now that whatever he said, it wouldn't change the fact that I had already taken back my power. If he sided with Luke, if the house slipped through my hands, then I would build something else. If he acknowledged me, finally, then it would be because I had forced the world to see me without begging for scraps. Either way, the outcome no longer defined me. I defined me. The phone buzzed again, insistent. Screen glowing in the corner of my eye, and I laughed softly, because once that sound had controlled me. Once it had meant obligation. Once it had meant I had to drop everything to prove I was loyal. Now it meant nothing more than noise. They could call all night, spin their stories, twist their words into daggers, but they would be talking to each other, not to me. I had closed that door, and I wasn't opening it again. The highway opened wider. The stars stretched endless above me, and for the first time, I wasn't just leaving. I was free. Free from the weight of being forgotten. Free from the cycle of giving without return. Free from the lie that family meant submission. I had turned the key. I had walked out. I had driven away, and in that act, I had written the ending they never expected. I was no longer theirs to forget. I was mine to remember. The sky was beginning to lighten at the edges. That grey-blue hour when the night surrenders. But morning hasn't fully claimed its ground. And I was still driving. Not because I didn't have anywhere to go, but because, for the first time in my life, I didn't need to rush toward or away from anyone else's demands. I could simply keep moving under my own will. The Audi's cabin was quiet, except for the steady hum of the engine and the occasional buzz of my phone, lighting up with another missed call. Another voicemail I would never play. Another message from people who suddenly remembered my number, when 2 days ago, they couldn't remember my birthday. It struck me how fast they reacted to something tangible. A car, a symbol they could measure in dollars, while years of my labor, my sacrifices, my loyalty had been invisible to them, erased. The moment it no longer served their story, tonight had burned that story to ash. I thought about the look on Mum's face when I said the debt was forgiven, not with resentment, but with finality. How she tried to mask her panic under words like dramatic and family. How Luke's smirk faltered when I pulled out Dad's email and shattered his certainty that he alone was the heir to everything that mattered. How Aunt Mel froze, caught between loyalty and disbelief, as if for the first time she realized I wasn't the quiet shadow they could control. That memory pulsed through me with a power stronger than their accusations, and I knew it would carry me forward. Even if tomorrow's conversation with Dad revealed the worst, I let my mind drift into the future, into visions I had never dared to allow myself before, because I had been too busy tending to their fires. A small apartment with walls painted in colors I chose. Birthdays that I celebrated with people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they wanted to be seen. Holidays where laughter didn't feel like performance, but like belonging. I pictured myself signing papers that no one else hovered over, building savings no one else demanded, surrounding myself with voices that lifted rather than silenced. The possibilities felt endless, and the fear that had always clung to me like smoke was gone, replaced by something cleaner, sharper, stronger. Resolve. Even if Dad tried to sway me tomorrow, even if Luke pushed his narrative harder, even if Mom weaponized her disappointment like she always had, none of it could pull me back into that chair, at that table. The version of me who had stayed quiet, stayed patient, stayed small. She had ended the moment I turned the key and walked out. What remained was someone they couldn't unsee, someone they couldn't reshape, and as the first hint of dawn spilled across the horizon, I gripped the wheel tighter and promised myself one thing. I would never, ever go back. The sun was breaking over the horizon by the time I finally slowed. Streaks of gold and orange cutting across the sky like a reminder that even the longest night has to end. And as the light filled the car, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been locked away since childhood. A release I hadn't believed was possible. I pulled into a quiet overlook off the highway. The kind of place I used to imagine stopping at when I wanted to run away. And for a long moment, I just sat there with the engine off, silence stretching wide, the world waking around me. Birds called from the trees, the air smelled damp and green, and the Audi gleamed faintly in the early light. Proof that this wasn't a dream. Proof that I had really walked out, that I had really said no, that I had really chosen myself over them. I thought about the years I had spent waiting for recognition that never came, the birthdays that passed unnoticed, the nights I covered bills while they laughed about Luke's big plans, the way I learned to carry responsibility like armor, because it was the only way to survive their neglect. And I thought about how quickly they had remembered me when they saw something they wanted, how fast their voices grew sharp when I showed them evidence, how their silence about my birthday transformed into demands about my car. That was the truth of it. I was never invisible. I was just inconvenient until I had something they could take. But not anymore. Tonight had been the break in the pattern. The night I showed them that silence was no longer compliance. That family wasn't a leash they could tighten whenever they pleased. That their stories about me being selfish, ungrateful, dramatic were nothing more than lies to keep me in place. When I slid that invoice across the table and said the words forgiven, when I told them the debt was gone, and so was I, it wasn't just about money. It was about 30 years of erasure ending in one clear act of defiance. And when Luke tried to play his trump card about the house, when he smirked and thought he had me trapped again, the look on his face when I revealed Dad's email was worth every mile I had driven since. For once, I wasn't the one caught unprepared. For once, I had the upper hand. I leaned back in the seat, the sunlight warming my skin, and I realized the future didn't scare me anymore. Whether Dad called tomorrow with good news or bad, whether Luke fought harder for control, whether Mom tried to spin the story to make me the villain, none of it mattered as much as the fact that I had walked out, I had driven away, I had proven to myself that I could live without their approval. The house might slip through my hands, the inheritance might tilt toward him, the gossip might spread through the family tree, but I still had something they could never reclaim. My freedom, my boundaries, my voice, and maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than any property they dangled in front of me. The world was awake now, the road waiting, the day opening like a blank page, and I understood something I had never let myself believe before. I wasn't missing out by leaving them behind. They were missing out on me, on the loyalty I had given freely, on the care I had provided without asking, on the years I had spent waiting for them to notice me. They had wasted all of that, and now it was gone. I turned the key again, the engine coming to life with a low purr, and I smiled to myself, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because I finally believed I could write a different ending. As I pulled back onto the road, leaving the overlook and the past behind, I whispered it aloud to no one but myself and the morning sky. I am not forgotten. I am free, and I will never go back.